We are now joined by a KCOU Sports Alum of the class of 2015. She has broadcasted in Alaska for a summer when she was a student and then joined the independent baseball ranks after graduating. Since March of 2020, she has been the voice of the Portland Sea Dogs, the AA affiliate of the Boston Red Sox. She was also named to the 2023 Main Biz 40 Under 40 list. We're pleased to have Emma Tiedemann on SPORTSMANIA. Emma, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely happy to be here.
So I just kind of wanted to start at the beginning of your journey. I just want to know where you grew up and how did you end up choosing Mizzou?
Yeah, so I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and Mizzou wasn't really on my radar until high school. I actually didn't want to go to college with my high school classmates anymore in Texas, and everyone was going to A&M, UT, or Texas Tech, it seemed like. And so we had some Mizzou recruiters at my high school one day and started talking to them about KOMU, KCOU, and the fact that you can, from day one, start broadcasting and start working, calling games and stuff. And I was sold. I went up to Mizzou during spring break just to tour it. It snowed 6 inches on our hour-long walking tour outside, and I still loved the campus and I still loved it. So I figured I'd love it in any weather, and definitely decided Mizzou was the place for me to be after that.
That's cool. So your introduction to KCOU was actually before you even got to campus?
Yeah, it was actually. It was in one of those, journalism pamphlets, and it was exactly what I was looking for, being able to not only, report on games, but to call play-by-play specifically. So that had me hooked from the start.
Yeah, and we talked to Steve Goldberg earlier, and you guys called the 2014 Cotton Bowl together. How was that experience?
That was surreal. And that's still an experience I think about pretty frequently, actually. Anytime I watch a Mizzou football game, I always think back to that night at AT&T Stadium and having our own broadcast booth with our attendant to help us connect to the internet and connect to the station. Yeah, that has definitely been a career highlight. And the fact that it's a career highlight that happened when I was still a college student, I mean, it was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and speaking of being a college student, you actually took kind of an unusual route to becoming a broadcaster in the sense that you majored in education. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I was originally a journalism major, and after my sophomore year, when we had to pick a track, I play-by-play wasn't a track, and that is exactly what I wanted to do. I did not want to report. I didn't want to anchor. I didn't want to do anything behind the scenes. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and it was play-by-play. So because of that, I actually shifted to education, and that actually opened me and my schedule up a little bit more to call more games for KCOU. So I was able to get on the schedule more, get more experience, and add more to my resume. So when I did start applying for jobs, I had a reel ready. I could just easily send it out to possible employers and have a decent leg up on the competition.
Yeah, and you got some experience in college, not only through KCOU, but you spent a summer in Alaska. How was that?
That was awesome. It was around that time that I wanted to work full time, year round, maybe for a university, calling a variety of sports, or maybe for a network. And so when I looked at my reel and everything, I said, oh, okay, well, baseball play-by-play is my weakest sport. So I'll look up summer collegiate leagues, and Alaska was the top of the list because A comes first. And sent out my reel and my resume and everything, and was hired. And it made me fall in love with baseball and working every day, and traveling to different parts of the country. So that's when I shifted to baseball. But it was because of KCOU and being able to send out a tape that I was able to get the job.
Were you ever kind of more into other sports before that summer experience?
Oh, for sure. Basketball still is probably my bread and butter. I grew up playing basketball, and I just love the sport so much, and I love calling it. That was actually the first game that I ever called, was a women's basketball game at the University of Texas at Dallas. And I still freelance and call basketball today. Call games for the University of New Hampshire. So yeah, basketball, I absolutely love. Football, obviously, with the Cotton Bowl and with Mizzou football as well. But yeah, basketball was always kind of number one in my heart, and baseball is kind of like a 1A at this point.
Right, right. And so you graduate college. You spent a handful of years in independent baseball. Could you go through each of those stops that you took? Because there were a couple of them, and maybe give us one takeaway from each.
Yeah, so right after I graduated, actually the day after I walked across the stage, I packed up my car and headed west to Medford, Oregon, and was the voice of the Medford Rogues, which is a summer collegiate team. And in Medford, I knew that I wanted to work in minor league baseball. So I started talking to minor league broadcasters about their responsibilities and started to mirror that position to a minor league job as best I could. So attempting to do game notes, they were really bad. Rosters, all of that kind of stuff. I wanted to be able to go into interviews and say, hey, I've at least attempted this stuff already. And I kind of have a good idea of those responsibilities. So I think my takeaway with Medford was just already thinking next step, and moving towards that. And then after Medford, I went to the St. Paul Saints, and they're now the AAA affiliate of the Twins, but at the time they were indie ball with the American Association. They played 100 games during the season, and it was some of the most fun I've ever had. Their whole motto is fun is good, and that starts from the front office, and it goes to the fan experience and everything. So I think with St. Paul, I mean, I think just learning to have fun every day, and baseball is not a serious business. It's fun, and minor league baseball especially it's fun. So every day I kind of remind myself that, fun is good, and it's good to laugh at yourself and always think like, okay, how can we make this better for the fans? And how can I make the broadcast better for the fans as well? So yeah, I think with St. Paul, I always just have fun is good is in the back of my mind.
Yeah, and then after that, you were hired in Portland in March of 2020. That is pretty unfortunate timing. COVID hit right around that time. I know, like, a lot of minor league teams had issues with COVID and everything. So how did Portland kind of weather that storm, and how did you personally kind of help them out with that?
Yeah, it was definitely weird. I remember driving up, moving, and listening to the radio, some sports radio. I think it was around Hartford, Connecticut, and them talking about how this NBA game was shut down in the middle of the game, and I didn't even click into my mind that I'm going to work for a sports team that might affect my future. But I started around March 17th of 2020, and my first day we had a all staff meeting, and our president introduced me as a new broadcaster and then said everybody should probably pack up and head home for the foreseeable future. So I went back to my very tiny apartment that was just boxes at that point. I didn't have furniture. And we worked from home from March until May, and then came back to the ballpark. And at that point, we knew the season was going to be canceled. And I was a little apprehensive because I was the new person. I thought that we'd start making some staff cuts because we weren't going to make money that season. But the Sea Dogs proved to be probably the best organization in baseball. They kept every full-time staff employee on. We never lost our health insurance. We were able to work, still make our salaries. And on top of that, they also paid the game day staff what they would have made if they worked that season as well. So I knew at least I landed with one of the best organizations you could ask for in that situation. But it was different because our season was canceled. So we focused on some social media stuff. We tried to do, stuff with like MLB The Show to try and engage people. And we tried some charity components as well to support the hospital staff around the Portland area. We did like a virtual sellout where you could buy a ticket, but that money would actually go to the doctors and nurses dealing with COVID patients. And then on nice weather days, which is pretty frequently in Portland during the summertime, we did stadium projects. So our staff would go out and grind handrails and repaint them. A lot of the green you see at Hadlock Field was painted by myself or our coworkers, and just kind of keeping us busy. And I think that's what helped me get through it. Trying to learn a new area when everything is shut down was really difficult. But I think just meeting all these Mainers up here, they're incredible people, super nice. It definitely helped things along.
Yeah, for sure. So, the pandemic kind of receded, and into 2021 kind of went back to normal. It was a delayed start to the minor league baseball season, but that season kind of was that more normal, or was that, having looked back on it now, was that more of a normal season, or was there still some difference?
Oh, there was still a lot of differences. That one was still kind of a weird situation because we didn't have the season in 2020, and then 2021, the guidelines came out and we actually couldn't come within 6 feet of the field. And that included staff members. So I didn't really go to the clubhouse at all in 2021 until maybe August or September, just because the rules were so strict. Luckily for us, the Sea Dogs team, the players and staff got vaccinated over the threshold. So I was able to travel because I didn't travel for the first couple of road series. So it was still like, okay, well, we have baseball back, but we have limited capacity at the fields. Our jobs are still very different. But I think at the end of the day, we were just happy to call games. And our fans were very happy to be able to come out to Sea Dogs games again. And then once the state lifted the restrictions, it was funny. It was during a game we got the notice that we could open the ballpark up to full capacity, and so I was up in the booth broadcasting the game, and then I see a lot of our coworkers out there with like wire clippers, and they were clipping off all of the seats that we had to zip tie closed. And so I knew, I was like, I think we're going back to full capacity tomorrow, because everyone was so happy to open up those seats again and get a full crowd in there. So it was really weird to start, but it was interesting to see the progression of slowly opening everything back up by the end of that year.
I actually worked in minor league baseball in California, and something very similar happened. Kind of like it wasn't during a game or anything, but like we came back to work one day and it was fully open and it was amazing. But I just kind of wanted to talk to you. You touched on it earlier, but your responsibilities outside of broadcasting. You obviously started picking it up in independent baseball. What are they now, and how did independent baseball kind of translate to that?
Yeah, I mean, indie ball, you do just about everything, and anything that they ask for. So I had a great boss and mentor in Sean Aronson with the Saints, and he kind of helped me plan my day, and knowing that, the broadcasters are typically media relations people as well, which is one of my responsibilities in Portland. So that includes stat packs, game notes, roster distribution, making sure the press box is ready, organizing interviews with the media, and then coordinating that with the players or the staff that they want to talk to. All those little things you do on a day-to-day basis. And so learning, okay, well, this is my chunk of time to get my game notes done. So I need to get all this stuff done. So then if anything comes up in the afternoon, say a tart pull, your stuff is done, so you can go and help your teammates, your coworkers. So I think it was just managing my time and knowing that, I'm not a one-person show. My department might be just me and sometimes with my assistant, but at the end of the day, this is a team office and a team mentality. So making sure that I get all my stuff done, so then I can spend the rest of my day helping other people. So yeah, like I said, game notes, stat packs, roster moves, all fall on my shoulders. Assisting with social media, making sure that our lineups get out on time, and all of those sponsored posts for social media are tweeted or X'd, I guess. Is that a verb now? It tweeted and put on Instagram and Facebook and everything. And then organizing those interviews in the afternoons with players, and then obviously calling the game, and then writing the post-game recap post-game, and putting that on our website, sending that out to our media list, and then putting all of that again back on social media. So it's a pretty full day.
Yeah, for sure. And what does the ramp up to this season look like? Is it any different than previous seasons?
It is a little bit different for me. I do have a newborn, so I'll be starting this season on maternity leave. But it up until 3 weeks ago, it did look very similar, just with a little bit of a shortened timeline. So making sure that our media guide was all finished and sent to the printer. Our media guide now is about 120 pages, I want to say. That's the big off-season project every year. Making sure that all of our radio ads are in, and making sure the radio station has all of those. They have our log ready to go. Coordinating with MLB to make sure our streaming rights are still up to date and we're good on that sense. And then making sure my assistant is all good to go. She'll be calling all of the games to begin this season before I come back in a couple of months. But yeah, it's, talking about 2020 and 2021, it's kind of weird to say like, oh yeah, this is just a normal season now after having such weird years. But yeah, everything is normal except for, a new baby.
Congratulations on that. And yeah, you have yet to have probably a full normal, well, maybe 2022. Is that a normal season for Foley?
Yeah, I would even 2023. That one was nice and smooth. I'll give it 2023.
For sure. I understand that you spent an inning with Joe Castiglione and Sean McDonough in the booth at Fenway Park. Tell us about that experience. How'd you get that?
That was totally unexpected, actually. I was actually meeting the organist, Josh Canner, for Fenway, and he was giving my husband and I a tour of Fenway because it was my first time there. And he took us up to the press box and said, "Oh, this is the radio booth." And Joe just happened to be in there, and he was having to do something, I think, for Shaw's supermarkets, and he was having to leave to go talk to them. And he said, "How about you just come back in the third or fourth inning, and we'll talk Sea Dogs and Tristan Casas," because we had Tristan Casas at that time. And I just was like, "Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm not going to say no." So I had a very couple of nervous innings waiting to go back up to the press box, but and then I get back up to the booth and sit down with Joe, and Sean says, "Oh, I'll be right back. I have to take a call." So I do a half inning with Joe, and he's awesome. I mean, he's now a Hall of Famer, obviously, with the Ford Frick Award. And we talk Sea Dogs, we talk prospects, and just being up in Fenway and looking down. I mean, it was an incredible moment and a nice reminder of the end goal for sure. And then Sean McDonough came back in and actually learned that he was going to be the new ESPN or NHL and ESPN broadcaster. That was his call. So he, kind of dropped that little nugget before we went back on. And then we had a nice chat about minor league baseball and tart pools and all the glory that's in it. So I still pinch myself with that moment because that was the best inning ever, I would say.
Just a bunch of things happening all at once in that one moment. That's pretty cool. What are your other cool experiences? Is there any other, in the booth at an MLB Park moment or something like that?
Not like at an MLB park. I mean, this last season with 2023 had the opportunity to call two no-hitters, which I had never called one before, and then I called two. And the first one, it was something that only baseball could provide. It was actually on the 1 year anniversary of a no-hitter in 2022. So I guess that was my second and third no-hitter. But it was on the exact 1 year anniversary in Akron. And so that was kind of one of those bizarre things that happened. And then we had another one towards the end of the season. And it was just one of those pinch me moments of how did we get so lucky to have two no-hitters in one game? And just kind of being on the edge of your seat that whole time and being completely anxious, heart beating out of your chest. Just in that ninth inning, you're just freaking out. But yeah, I that's definitely the highlights from this last season were the two no-hitters. It was awesome.
Do you say no hitter on air?
I go back and forth. I think if I listen back, like the first one, I don't say it, and then the second one I do around the fifth or sixth. But I say it like, "Oh, well, we have the no hitter alert on MLB.com now," or something like that. But I do drop the line score a lot, like New Hampshire with no runs, no hits, no errors. But I don't try to explicitly say it because I am a little superstitious.
Does has not allowed a hit through blank innings? Does that count?
I mean, I don't think so because you don't say explicitly no hitter. So you're just, I don't know. You still have to report on it. You still have to say it in so many
Right.
words, but yeah,
Communicating without directly communicating it. That's the key.
exactly.
Bring it back full circle, kind of like what were some of the experiences in KCOU that has kind of helped you along with this journey, or what are the skills that kind of KCOU taught you to help you along with this baseball journey?
Oh man, a ton. I think one of the main ones was always asking for feedback, which can be really, really terrifying, sitting out your tape and sending out innings. But that feedback is so valuable. And then also learning to listen back to yourself, also can be a very painful experience. But just kind of listening back to the games that you've called because you can hear, "Oh, I didn't say the score enough in this instance. Oh, this double off the wall, I could have, called that a little bit better, especially with the runner on base." You know how to kind of fix those things yourself. And it can be also very valuable. So I think just not being afraid of the critiques and the feedback, because at the end of the day, it's going to make you better. And that's exactly what college is for. It's for growing. And once you're comfortable doing it, then once you're in your professional career, I'm still doing it today of sitting it out and still talking to people and trying to get better every day. So it's something that it's going to be painful that first couple of times, but once you get in a habit and a routine of it, it makes your life as a whole even better.
Emma, thank you so much for joining us. Glad we could have this conversation and hope you stick around for SportsMania.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me.